Hey, welcome back, Dirk. Good to see you again.
Yes, and you, Mark?
Thank you. Thank you, sir. So, your first week of the second round of treatment.
Yes.
How's it been?
Interesting. It's always interesting. I think last time we spoke, we talked about how this week wasn't this round of treatment wasn't going to be much different to the first round, but that I probably have a bit more of a grasp of what's going on. And what I'm finding is that in my treatments, I'm spending more time. I'm comfortable with what's happening. I don't have to be alert all the time. I can take my mind off it and focus on learning more about what's going on in terms of the specific IV treatment, what the hyperbaric chamber is trying to do, and that type of thing. So it's been quite good, and trying to advance my knowledge so that when I step out of the program, I'm at a new level of knowledge and the ability to move forward with a lifestyle and a nutritional plan that suits my body's needs. So that's what I've been focusing on. This week, after our discussion last week, I mentioned that I was in the middle of dealing with some emotional stuff in my body and my life, and that came to a head on the Sunday with some pretty strong emotional responses, and I worked through that. And then on the Monday evening, seemed to find a balance that let me work through the Tuesday. Tuesday was very emotionally empty because I used up all my emotions, and then Wednesday there was a significant shift in my emotional state. In terms of the treatments, yeah, the dosages have gone up a little bit with especially like the EDTA, which is the heavy metals chelation. So that's going up. So every time I'm here this week, every week I'm here, the level of dosage will go up until the end. The R soda reverts back to the normal levels, which is the urine therapy. I didn't have very good, well, I had a good response, but it just, my body's just saying, well, that was easy, no problems there. So, yeah, an interesting week. Certainly started off emotionally very tense, and got myself to a point the end of this week where I'm feeling pretty content with things. Yeah, which I'll go into a bit more detail as we talk a bit more, but
Sure.
it's been quite a revealing week.
Have you got any tests back from before the week off?
So yeah, so we did a compare. So this week, so as you go through the week, on the Wednesday you get the soda shot, and then on the Thursday you have a consult with the senior nurse, and that goes to the doctor, and they compare their weekly blood results. What had happened is the key things that have come up is that inside my body's showing a lot of inflammation, which is what you'd expect because I'm removing all these heavy metal toxins. I'm asking my body to work harder to remove the unwanted toxins in my body, and so it's going to inflame a bit more because it's got to come out of the cells, get into your excretory systems, and then come out of the body. My hemoglobin has came back to a level pretty much the same as when I first turned up. And that makes sense because as you go through, some of the treatments can alter things in your body. So my hemoglobin, red blood cells, has gone down a bit, and then it's come back up to where I first started, which is nothing to fear. It's just that's the process the body's going through because some of the stuff they do depletes them. But that's why we have these blood tests every week, is to monitor it. If anything hugely anomalous comes up, then there can be remedies in place to resolve that. So that was good. Yeah. So what I'm showing is a stabilizing of my values that we're looking for, that they measure the success of your body, whether it's functioning properly. It's within a good range. So the only thing that came up this week that was of a bit of an issue was the ferritin. So my iron store levels has dropped off a bit. Nothing to be concerned about, because when you're detoxing the heavy metals out of your body, well, iron's a heavy metal that's going to come out too. So they've got me on supplements and stuff to manage that, but it's not a biggie. Overall, if you looked at my bloods, you'd be looking, well, I'm a pretty healthy person. And I believe I am. I do believe I am.
What would you say personally was the greatest benefit for you in having the week off? And actually answer that as, both personally, but then also for your body, what do you feel the greatest benefit was?
For my body was sleep. I needed sleep. I
Mm.
was tired, mentally tired and physically tired. I did a lot of resting. My brother and I had planned a lot of trips out and about to go sightseeing. We only went out for a couple of days because neither of us felt that our body needed to be pushed. And I think that's one thing I'm learning, is that I can push my body very hard in terms of making it do things it doesn't want to, but I'm not listening to it then. So physically letting that body recuperate. With that, we discussed this last time, up came the emotional issues that I'd been putting off because of the concentration or the focus on something outside of me, takes me away from what's going on inside of me. So emotionally, that brought up that to deal with. In terms of the results with the treatment and going into the next round, nothing that I'm aware of. I think it's just that rest period. I feel stronger. I was able to get into the yoga again, do more meditation while that week was off, and I haven't been full on every day doing the yoga and the meditation, but I've got a calmness. It allowed me to reset my focus mentally, to allow me to, what is it that brings me health? Before that, I think we mentioned it last time, I'd spent a lot of time last week researching the COVID-19 situation, and that drove me into a state of despair at times. Not an overt level, oh my God, the world's going to end, but to a point where a lot of anxiety comes up, a lot of fears come up. And I just went, I can't live in that. That's not good for me, and it's not good for my body. So I made a decision on the Monday when I started the treatment to focus on joy. What is it that's bringing me happiness? I want to feel good, because there are days when I don't feel very good and I feel a bit nauseous, a bit of lightheadedness. I want to feel good more often than I want to feel bad. So what is it that does that? Well, my focus, my happiness. Turn off the phone. Don't watch as many YouTube videos. Minimal communication with people, and just focus on what are the good things. Every day this week, I've got a little notebook. As I was sitting in my chair getting my IV therapies, I just wrote pages of gratitude. What am I grateful for? And that gratitude snapped me out of this despair. It was a difficult process because I'd be sitting there writing down these things of gratitude, and I'm going, oh, I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm doing it, but I'm not sure it's working. But as the next day come along, I could feel that gratitude build. Oh, this is getting easier. Sorry to keep you awake. This gratitude thing is getting easier, but on the third day I did it, the Wednesday, it was just like, boom, okay, that's better. That's where I should be because I'm happier. Smiling again, come home with a smile on my face.
Wow. So how did your body respond to starting up treatment again after the week? Did you notice anything, or was it pretty much smooth sailing?
Smooth sailing. Vitamin C is going into my body. My body really appreciated the vitamin C going in. There was a shortage of vitamin C as a result of the shutdown. So that was a noticeable one. My body just went, oh, this is good. And as I'm sitting there, it's funny because you can taste when they put the IV in, because it's going in through my arm and into my heart, you can taste it. And so with vitamin C, you can get a bit of a numbing of the lips and fingers and tingling and stuff. I respond particularly well. Some people are very sensitive to the IVs going in. I guess I'm a bigger guy. I'm pretty healthy anyway. So my body's not feeling the effects that would for somebody who's smaller trying to get these big doses. So yeah, I'm not, the thing mentally, or the perception I have is that it's going deeper. The treatment's deeper level. If that makes any sense. Pretty hard to describe. My body, when I'm sitting there, I just feel like this is really working. That's what I feel. And I believe it is. Discussions with the doctor this week, who's a phenomenal doctor, Dr. Sarah Barber. She has a way of putting things very succinctly and is aware of perceptions and of how we view the world. I was able to have a conversation with her one-on-one, and she said, my progress is really, really good. My progress is really good because I'm doing the work. And the work is, you take your supplements, you do your IVs, you do the therapies they give you, and then you work on your emotional stuff. You've got to do the emotional stuff.
So where are you at on that journey, the emotional stuff?
So this is the fun part of the week, Mark. So when I saw you, when we talked last with Daryl online, I was going through an emotional issue. So it was bringing up issues around things in the past that's gone on in my life that I wasn't comfortable with, or were just causing me aggravation. I didn't quite get what it was. And I went to, uh, and some of the stuff we discussed last week brought up a trigger that happened to me on the Sunday, an emotional trigger, and I had an outburst. I once again decided that my sister and my brother deserved to be yelled at, and they really didn't. Um, but there's some things said that weren't intentionally to try and hurt me at all. But I took it as, well, you're attacking me personally. And I share this not because I share this because this is what happens to people, and it happens to me. I'm no more different to anybody else, but this is what happens to me. So they said some things, and I took it personally, and all this rage that was inside of me, or anger, I'm not going to say rage, it was more anger, just came to the surface. So what they had done was just scratch the surface of something that was sensitive to me, and I just went, "Rah," and erupted. What that resulted in me doing was this double bed beside me decided to get, I whacked it a few times. I'm not destructive, but I did bang it a few times. And I know because there's rage inside of me or anger inside of me, it's got to come out. But when it comes out, it can't hurt anybody else. It can't destroy anything that's precious to me or anybody else's. And it's got to be a healthy release of it. So I just banged it like that. I'm not destroying any property. But I did that for about 5 minutes. And then I cried for the next 30 because it was just all these unexpressed emotions were coming out at the same time. Now, if I had to use my old perception of that, it's not right for a man to cry. You shouldn't cry because it's a sign of weakness. But I'm playing with my life here, and I want to be the healthiest and happiest I can be. So I went, I'm not holding this back. So I released it. And then when I got through that point, went and saw my brother and sister and had a chat to them and just expressed what was going on. Because it's more than just the treatment, there were a few things triggering that. Past relationships were coming up for me. And a friend that I knew passed away this week from cancer. And that wasn't upsetting, but it was a realization that, life changes. And then obviously the COVID situation as well, it can get on top of you. And then just, what's life going to look like for me when I get home? So a lot of pressures coming up and just had to come out. When I went to the clinic on the Monday, every 3 times a week, we do something called the Lymph Star, which is about activating the lymphatic system. Now, you can get manual lymphatic drainage massages, which are really intense and take a lot of time. This clinic uses a Lymph Star Pro, which is an electronic device that you put onto your main lymph areas, and it helps to promote your lymphatic system, to stimulate it, to release the toxins and let your body deal with it naturally. And then there's another treatment called the OnDemand, which is a bioresonance type machine which measures the frequencies of organs. What's interesting is I've looked through the reports I've had from every week, and every second week, my lymphatic system's the one on top, which is the order of priority, which is showing this system needs the most support because it's either working hard or whatever. So it's not in its normal frequency range. And as I was looking through the reports, I mean, this is every second week, and in the off week when it's not number 1, it's number 2. And I go, well, what's happening there? So I wondered about that, and I looked at what does that mean to me? And it wasn't until I was doing my coffee enemas, which are fun. It gives me an hour each night by myself to think about what's going on inside me. I had a realization that I just went, because some emotional stuff from the past came up. I mean, what was it about that upset me? And what it was I get intuitive messaging. Things come to us. All of us have got an intuition. I get this intuitive message, and what I've been doing in the past was ignoring it. So I bring it in. I'll hear this intuitive message or feel it, and then in the 3D world, I will maybe say something verbally, but I don't act on it. And so what I'm doing is denying a part of me, my intuition, for the sake of trying to be real. And so what happens is my intuition says something, I don't act on it, it leaves me in a situation that's not good for me. So I'm not listening to who I am. I'm not valuing my own views enough to put myself first and act on those. So then I came out of that enema pretty excited, going, well, that's a kind of a breakthrough. And I asked my mother, who's got a book on the emotions in the physical body, to send me pictures of what each one of these areas means. Lymphatic system, what does that mean for you? And bleeding. And the lymphatic system in the book said, it's when you undervalue yourself. It's when you undervalue your perspectives on the world and your intuition, and you don't act on what is right for you. Well, that's pretty interesting. So I'm writing this down. So I've got a daily journal that I write stuff down as I'm sitting there writing this down. And this is the cool part. Well, it's all cool. I'm writing that down, and I went, I need to talk to Janine DeVere Hunt, who's my kinesiologist in New Zealand. So, as I'm writing this down, my phone goes bing. She sent me a message, and I went, can I talk to you sometime these next few days? And she goes, I've got an hour free. I can talk to you now. So I talked to her, and she uses kinesiology. And I said to her, my lymphatic system, what's going on with that? And she said, well, from the kinesiologist's perspective, it's when you're getting intuitive values, but it's not marrying with the physical world. And so you've got to balance those two out. That's exactly the same thing my mother said. It's the same thing I experienced in my own mindset, and Janine confirmed it. Mind blowing. So I went, well, that's pretty cool revelation. What can I do about that? Well, I've got to trust myself more. And when I get an intuitive inclination, and if people doubt your intuition and say there's a logical, rational process to go through everything, well, there is. But I do believe your intuition is a lot stronger than we make out. And I do believe it's there for all of us, because not always the best journey is A to Z. It's often A to K to Z to Y to all over the place. So that was a revelation. Then on the Wednesday, I went to, I got the soda injection. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest reaction, I had a 2, which is low, like almost no reaction. The only reaction I got was after a friend in New Zealand did a healing on me, and my body decided to let go of some stuff. But that was a 2. So on the consult on the Thursday, I said to the nurse, I said, look, this emotional issue came up. And so working through the gratitude on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I'd worked through it by the Wednesday. And I said to her on the Thursday, this is the emotional issue that came up. She goes, well, that's good. That's actually a good thing, because you want these things to come out in your body. But they booked a session with me to do the EVOX on the Friday, and that's with Dr. Sarah Barber. And I chose a subject. The subject was balancing the 3D world needs versus my intuition coming in and acting upon that. And what it showed was that when I don't value my opinion from a higher source, I'm undervaluing me. So the releasing statement for that was, I've got it mixed up. I thought the material world drove the field, and the field is the quantum field, or God, whatever you want to call it. Whereas I know that it is the field that drives the material world. So if you're religious, God, Jesus, they're the ones that give you the energy to follow a purpose that's right for you. I'm probably a bit more spiritual than that, in terms of there's a energetic force out there that is guiding us in all situations. And so allowing that to come into my life and then acting on that. And I tell you what, this whole healing journey, when I allow that process to happen, it's amazing. When I try to get in with my head and try and dictate how it must be, I don't get anywhere. And even the doctor said to me, I was trying to micromanage the healing journey. She says, you don't have to. You just need to trust that this process, your body's going through these changes. Don't grab onto any one aspect and say, that's not right, it's got to be fixed. Because the human body, we don't exactly know how it releases all this stuff and heals fully. Nobody does. But the doctors have a better understanding, because they've been through it and seen it a number of times. They have rules of thumb that they gain through the experience that allows them to see what happens when the body changes.
Yeah, that's really it. I mean, I think that a lot of people, regardless of the faith or dogma that they follow, try to control the process of healing or individuation or enlightenment, or whatever you want to call the journey that you're on. When we're trying to control that, we put up this barrier between us as this reason motivated being, and that universal creative force or God or what have you. So you mentioned that in addition to inflammation, that you had also asked your mom what blood symbolized. What was the result of that?
Bleeding was giving your power away. Like, it's bleeding out. You know, for me, and I've had other friends tell me this in the past as well when I first got diagnosed, bleeding out is giving your power away, is not standing in your power and holding your energy for yourself. And how does that exhibit? When something happens around you, you give everything you've got emotionally to that situation. And you'll know when you've done this because you walk away and you feel exhausted. You know, you feel tired, you've got nothing left, you're all spent. And so I spent a lot of time in my life doing that. And that was because I believed that I needed to help that person as much as possible. But in reality, to flip that back on me, my value I perceived was in helping that person as much as I could so they could see value in me because I couldn't see value in myself.
Mm.
Hmm. So
Important distinction, you know,
yeah,
because it's intent, right?
yeah,
It's about intent, and even good action that's motivated by selfish intent kind of diminishes the amount of um, growth that we can experience. Um, so I'd love to kind of go back for a moment and explore the tools that you use when dealing with anger. What are your, I mean, you know, of course you gave that wonderful example of you know, the bad, you know, but what kind of practical tools do you know, there seemed to be a bit of a systematic process when you were describing it. So just wondering if you could chat a little bit about that.
sure. I guess the first step is an awareness. What when I feel uncomfortable or emotionally triggered, what is causing that?
Mm.
Now, it's very easy for us in this world to point the finger at the other person and say, well, that action there causes the stress in me. And, you know, if a car accident happens in your environment and you're involved in it, well, it's very easy to point the finger and say, well, you caused that, so therefore you're the cause of all this.
Yeah.
But what I've found in my own experience is if you do that, you're taking away your ability to get through that situation the best that you can. So if you're so focused on blaming that other person for that trigger, you're missing, if you're in a car accident, you're missing the ability or the focus to be able to see the best way out of this situation and how do I get myself to safety or to a better place to look after whatever injury I might have or not.
Mm.
Now, car accidents, obviously some car accidents you can't get out of, you have to rely on other people to help you out. But if you're so focused on the anger at that person because they caused it, you're missing all the things that are going on in your own body, the awareness of what's happening. So in the awareness is one. Two, well, if it's an awareness, where does that come from? So now I've for as long as I've known you, which is back in 2012, I've been aware that a lot of our emotions are. What was I going to say there? So I've been aware that a lot of our. Sorry, Mark. I'm just trying to. So we had awareness, and then two, what's the best way to deal with it? I've
Well,
been aware that a lot of our triggers come from other people, but I then had to look at what's the emotion that's triggering inside of me. And I've known that emotions in the body are able to be attached to some sort of organ or whatever. So awareness, understanding where it's coming from, and then three is taking action in terms of what can I do to uncover what that is. And once again, it kind of reverts back to one, is it's not out there. It's all in here. So my whole perspective on life is I want to have fun. I want to be happy. Happiness to me is a life where I get to be curious, I get to explore, I get to try new things, I get to have peace in my life. I don't get caught up in drama. I've got good friends, good food, that type of thing. So if it's taking me away from that, well, why? And so taking action is, well, what's the best method for dealing with this? Now, in my situation, I've got a whole lot of books around me that show me that there's different emotions have different meanings. I go and try and understand what those are. I read a book, or I'll go on the internet and type in metaphysical meaning of anger, and find out what that means and go, well, what can I do about that? Often the awareness is enough, because when I have conversations with my friends like yourself or anybody else, even doctors or people in the street, an awareness of that trigger, often you'll hear an answer to that in a conversation with somebody. So
Mm.
I rely a lot on people around me. They're not consciously, I'm not consciously asking the question, what does this mean to you? And then waiting for an answer. But as I'm conversing, information's coming through from them about what it means. Like, oh, that's what it means.
Mm.
So I take that way. In terms of releasing anger, uh, there are valid therapies where you can go and get. My auntie tells me this all the time. Go and get a pillowcase and go to the second-hand shop and buy a whole lot of crockery and go and smash it in that pillowcase, because then you don't have to clean it up. It's just in the pillowcase, and just throw it in rubbish. But the anger's come out. For me, belt in the bed, a sponge, it can't hurt a sponge. Um, but for me, one of the mechanisms has been crying, because it's deep down. I've had energy healings with people that I admire and respect, and one particular gentleman in particular, Gary Chadwick in Tauranga, New Zealand. Sometimes he will verbally express the emotion or the fear that's there, in terms of, and it sounds like crying. And for me, I've had a number of healing sessions with him. When he vocalizes it, I can hear myself in it, and I go, oh, okay, he's saying what I'm feeling. And it's funny, because I've had about 4 sessions with him. Each time I go there, he vocalizes it, and it changes. It was really intense and deep when I first saw him. The last time I saw him, just before I came over to the United States, it wasn't as deep. Still deep, but wasn't as deep, and as horrific as that first time, traumatic. So that's another way, is to go and get an energy healing. Some people might want to go and see a psychologist and work through it and talk through it. Some people talk and release it. Some people go out for a run. Some people might go to the gym and just pound those weights and lift it all out. It's finding that release mechanism for you. The predominant way, I guess, for me, is I just go and find a quiet spot and cry. And it might be beside a river, it might be on a beach, it might be in my bedroom, wherever, just away from people, and just cry, because it hurts. It hurts. And I don't want to feel that anymore. I don't want to be stuck in that. So I want to get it out. And as I talk to you about this, it happens. And it's not just a theory. Like Greg Norman, one of the world's greatest golfers over a long, long time, back in the 90s and 2000s, he was leading the US Masters by 6 shots on the last day and lost. Unheard of. And anyway, I've read his autobiography in the past. Anyway, after that, he's went home to his place and sat down on the beach and just cried and cried and cried, because this guy had a number of golf tournaments where he was leading on the final day and lost the tournament. Now, he did that for all 4 majors. For those who don't know much about golf, there's 4 tournaments in the year that are huge, and to win all 4 of those is a massive achievement. Tiger Woods did it one time a few years back, where he won all 4 tournaments in a row, not within the same calendar, but in a row. World's greatest golfer now. Greg Norman, he did it, but he led on the Saturday for each of the tournaments and won one of them. That's gutting. Like, that is hugely difficult to take when you're one of the world's best golfer at the time, and you can't kick over the line to win that tournament. So he went and cried, and he had a lot of revelations in that, because there was an authenticity in what he did. So I don't look at crying as being that big or bad a thing, but I know a lot of people do. But he's one of my idols. I amazingly respect the guy. And so for me to sit there and have a bit of a blubber by myself, it's not the end of the world.
So out of curiosity, whether in relation to this golfer or something that you kind of took away from that story, I'm curious what, did he have any kind of conclusion why he was unable to, follow through at the sort of finish line, or what was it that was kind of sabotaging, his ability to kind of, rein it all in and win?
I can't remember. It's been a few years since I read the book. But if I generalize and make some statements that may not be correct, my taking and reading that book, it was around the mind. Now, this guy, he'd been winning tournaments left, right, and centre on the tour. So you go to a normal weekly tour event, and he'd win, no problem. He was winning more than anybody else. But when it came to the really big ones, the ones that really mattered to him, he probably put too much pressure on himself. And that's the way I've lived my life as well. I expect perfection, and when I don't get it, it's destroying. But I've missed the joy of the journey to get there. And so it was my mindset, and I perceive that from reading his book, the mindset you have about being able to just keep enjoying that moment and being there without trying to force it.
Yeah, or putting the pressure on yourself,
Yes.
the expectations. So when you were talking about, this process, the first thing that you mentioned was awareness, the process of dealing with anger and really dealing with anything, whether it's guilt or shame. I would suggest that probably step number one in all of those cases is awareness. And you hinted at the origin. I think the term you used was the origin of awareness and a contemplation of that. And I'm just curious what what that means to you, what the origin of your awareness, because who you are right now today is an awareness that is developed, certainly in the 8 years that I've known you. It's developed, and I think it would be fair to say that awareness has developed consistently through your life. So when you're looking at awareness, again, your comment, where is the origin of awareness, or where does that come from? Curious about your thoughts.
I think I'm getting what you mean. If I use my lymphatic system, the indicator of it was that it shows up on the reports. So it's a common trend that I'm seeing in my life. And so I intentionally went, well, what is that? Why is that there? And then I went on through the next part of the journey, which was understanding what that meant. And how did I do that? I just laid there, and as I was in my enemas, and I was just thinking, well, what is it? What is that? And I just let my mind contemplate what that meant. The origin, I guess, the frame of reference that I have for why I believe where that gets stimulated from or generated from. And when I first met you and started to understand a lot of this stuff, I still thought the world resided outside of me. I thought everything that went wrong in my life was a result of the external environment coming in on me. But it wasn't. And so the head injury is a perfect example. I got rear-ended in a car by a boy racer that started my journey with 6 head injuries over 12 months that ended my career and the way that I thought life was. And so here I am, always trying to recover from that. And so I'm trying to find the remedy to fix me. When I got diagnosed with the cancer diagnosis, I went, that's not going to work anymore, that approach. There has to be a change. And so I started to read more, and I did a lot of listening to audio books and summits on healing cancer. And the common theme in there was taking responsibility for your own life in terms of what your actions are, how you think, what things mean to you, perception reframing. And we've talked about that in the past as well with the EVOX therapy over here. But I started to realize that no matter, and Viktor Frankl, we've talked about that book as well, Man's Search for the Meaning of Life. When I started to realize it's how I interpret life that's causing me problems, because inside of my body, I've got this issue here that's risen up over a period of years, not days or weeks, but years. I'm driving that somehow. And so it's my perspective. So since the diagnosis, I've changed my perspective based on listening to audiobooks and realized I have the ability to influence it,
Mm,
and made that move. And even it got reiterated today by my doctor, when she said that how you perceive the situation often determines the outcome of it.
yeah.
And I've talked about reading this book here in previous discussions, The Honeymoon Effect by Dr. Bruce Lipton. And he talks about science. You know, we think science is an absolute. and where I've got to in life is science is a methodology for analysing and assessing, a methodical approach to make sure we understand everything before we make a conclusion. But his research has shown that science is often determined by the observer. So if you set up a scientific experiment and you're a skeptic that it's not going to work, it probably won't. But if you set up a scientific observation and experiment and you believe that it will work, it probably will. So in my own body, I believe I'm going to get healthy. Well, I probably will. so that realization that our mindset and how we perceive the world is probably the biggest determinant in terms of our health and enjoyment of the world around us. I can't change this COVID situation today because I'm not in a position to influence it that way, but I can change how I respond in that environment. And that is stop watching all the YouTube videos because there's a lot of trauma in those things, a lot of fear. Start to focus on what I'm grateful for in my life, bring in more of that, because in our daily life, if you look at this whole screen, COVID's only this big, but in your daily life, you've got your wife, your kids, your job, your house, the air that you breathe, the grass that grows, the fresh air that comes through your lungs, all these things to be grateful for, but we've got this one thing this big that we're focused on. That's not an accurate reflection of what reality is.
Mm.
So that's the realization of the origin. So for me, it was just going from realizing the world doesn't just happen to me and realizing I influence the world outside of me.
Yeah, I approaching this from my own sort of unique journey. I am fully in agreement with you. I think one of the greatest things that I learned in my study of Carl Jung, was the importance of accepting personal responsibility, the importance of owning that as a tool for self-awareness, as a tool for moving forward and becoming more enlightened or becoming more of your authentic self. It seems to me that often people who are spiritually interested or spiritual minded tend to think that their self-awareness is a result of their willingness to be introspective. But at some point within the last 6 years of my journey, I realized that introspection is just the other side of the same coin. That you have rumination on one side, which is unhealthy unhealthy chatter of the mind, versus introspection, which is perhaps a more healthy expression of the same thing, of the endless sort of chatter of the mind. And I really don't think in my experience that my self-awareness came from being introspective, because I've been introspective since I was a child. I was raised in a very Christian, a very religious environment, and introspection was encouraged. And that didn't, when I look at sort of the big picture of the story of my life, introspection in itself isn't what was the catalyst for, the kind of self-awareness that I'm experiencing since I really began owning up to my responsibility to make choices that support the ideal state that I want to be in. And you referenced, fear and the fear state. And if you can identify that watching certain videos, whether they're YouTube videos or just a movie, I mean, whatever, right? Everything that we expose ourselves to is influencing us. And if we're not taking personal responsibility to understand what that influence is, and how it's affecting our perception and our predominant mental attitude, then we definitely don't have the kind of advantage that one would have if they took that incentive, to know what was influencing them. Certainly I can understand, as you talk about, and I laughed for joy when you said that, with your diagnosis came a realization that you had to kind of flip the script on how you were interpreting or how you were giving credit to the experiences that you were having, whether they were coming from within you or without. So, I'm always, and I'd said to you earlier before we started the call, just how I'm consistently amazed at the synchronicity in the way that we both have seemed to arrive at very similar conclusions, but yet been traveling on maybe a different path to get there,
Definitely.
So in the process of doing these videos, as you've heard from different people, what are some things that you would maybe say to people in general when it comes to this subject of learning to own your behavior and learning to take responsibility for choices?
I don't know, that's a deep one, Mark. Don't blame yourself. I spent a lot of time in my past blaming myself for everything that went wrong. And I'd even blame myself when something went wrong in somebody else's life. And it was nothing to do with me. When I blame myself, I prevent myself from seeing that picture in a way that I can work from. And so that blame would come back in my own head. It would replay as, I'm a bad person. I didn't do that right. I should have done this. I should have done this. I should have done that. And as some people have said to me in the past, you should have all over yourself. And it prevents me from seeing what's there. The judgment, so the blame I'm putting on myself, that's judgment of myself, undervaluing myself. And we've discussed this in a number of videos now, where I judge myself too much. I can only judge myself if I apply a meaning to something. And so if I'm applying a meaning that somebody over there fell over and scraped their knee and it was my fault because I didn't say anything to them, or I wasn't able to run over there and grab them before they fell, then I'm judging myself and attaching the meaning that I'm not a good person. That's the furthest from the truth. Something's going to happen in life. Something's always going to happen in life. That's why they call it life. But if I look at that and go, well, that's a bit unfortunate. I wonder what could have been improved there to stop that from happening in the future. Because as human beings, the first time, obviously, we often mess up and we learn, we progress and find better ways of doing things. So don't blame yourself and don't apply a meaning to as much stuff. And if you do want to apply a meaning to something, make it the best you can. What's the best meaning I can apply to the situation? Example, cancer diagnosis. The first thing most people hear when they hear that is I'm dead. And I'm not going to say I didn't hear that. I went, oh, this is going to be tough. But cancer doesn't mean death. I've got a close friend, a woman I admire and respect, her and her husband, Justine Laidlaw. She's 7 years, no evidence of disease, after having surgery for colon cancer and then refusing chemo and radiation that were recommended by the doctor because she still had a growth inside of her chest. Now, she just had a test the other day. It's on Facebook, so I'm not telling anybody anything that's not publicly available. 7 years later, no evidence of disease. Her choice to believe in herself and know there's a better way by changing her perspective on life, her lifestyle in terms of the food she ate, and finding a way that makes more sense to her. 7 years, no sign of cancer. So she's just had this recent evaluation review. Well, in theory, she should be dead, because that's what the meaning is applied to the situation from traditional medical understanding.
Mm.
Now, you can also put the mean or the interpretation that she's an anomaly. That she's not the rule. Who's to say she can't be the rule? That the way she got through this could be the rule for everybody, so they all get through it. If we have a belief system that cancer means death, well, the chances are you're going to die from it. And that's me being pretty blatant and probably a bit too black and white. But if you have, in my own experience, and what I did was, this is an opportunity for me to really get through this, to understand what's in my body, what the way I perceive the world, and take the steps forward to change that. All I want to be now is the best person that I can be, the most happiest and free person I can be. Well, I'm getting there because I decided to let go of all the rubbish that I thought I knew. So, yeah, don't blame yourself. Apply a good meaning, don't judge yourself, and don't be scared to explore.
So as you, going back to your treatment here for a moment, um, as you're heading into the second week of round 2, um, what can you expect, and is there any differences in what you might expect than in week 2 of round 1?
Okay.
And not necessarily just limited to the treatment itself. Um, so maybe even if that's a personal change that's going to be different.
I think I'm going to continue with the gratitude journaling, because that just makes me feel good and happy. And so when a situation unfolds with me, I'm happy, rather than responding and walking around all day gloomy going, oh, I don't know what's happening. So that's one aspect of it. 2, I'm going to just keep cutting back on the videos and the having to trace this COVID discussion to the nth degree, because I've realized that my primary objective for being here, and I've known this all along, but sometimes you get reawakened to what that is to heal, is for me to be able to live the rest of my life. That's what I'm here for. This COVID stuff, I can't really influence it too much, so I'm better off just to focus on what I can influence, and that is my body, my emotional state, and doing the healing the best way I can through the clinic. In terms of the treatment, I think it's just keeping understanding more of what's going on about what is each IV trying to achieve. I have a general overview of what that means, but I don't know what specifically each one is doing.
Sure.
The other thing I've started to do is, in the hyperbaric chamber, I've given up trying to meditate in there, because it just proved too difficult, and I'm trying to make it easy on me. So I've found I'm taking a book in there with me now. So that's where I was able to finish Dr. Lipton's book on the honeymoon effect. And now I've taken in a book by Sally Fallon Morell, who is known through the Weston A. Price organization here in the United States. And she talks about nutrition and nutritional food needs, such as bone broth and traditional food, nutrient-dense food. And so I'm starting to research that, and even through my initial reading of one of her books, I'm starting to find out that a lot of the food choices we make around that we used to do in the old days, which was around not just eating the muscle meat of an animal, but eating the organs and the bones, or through broths. A lot of those amino acids and type things that we need in our bodies actually come through eating those organs and stuff, as opposed to the muscle meat. And what I'm finding is that a lot of the therapies I'm getting are actually lined in with that. One of them is called glutathione, which is in there to help your body to assist with your immune response. Well, you can get that through eating the bone broth. So starting to get more awareness, and that's what I said earlier about focusing on what's my next step once I come out of this. So how do I maintain this level? Because I have talked to people when they come out of treatment, they take a bit of a downward trend for a bit, because obviously while you're here, all the minerals, all the supplementation is going in, full treatment, detoxing every day. When you step out of it, you get a bit lazy, because you go, oh, I'll have a bit of a break because it's been hard. And so your body starts to show that it's not the best approach. So I'm trying to come out of this whole treatment and stay on that level and keep going up. That's the goal. So that's what the next week will probably entail, is just continue to grow my knowledge on that.
have you begun to kind of put together any kind of um, um, a template for what post-treatment might look like, as far as what supplements and what treatments you could continue in New Zealand?
Sure. Yes, and two ways that has come from. One is when I drop out of the treatment system over here, my supplemental regime will drop off as well. So I won't have the full intensity because I'm not going through all the treatments. But there will still need to be a core supplemental regime there. So I've got that one from the clinic here, and I will be following up on a lot of the supplements that I was taking before I came to the United States, because they were already showing good improvements. And some of the supplements I was taking in New Zealand before I came to the States are what have been recommended by the clinic over here. So that gave me a lot of confidence that what I was doing was already in a good state. Supplements, when I get back to New Zealand, I'm still going to continue some of the treatments that I'm doing over here, but this intensity of them won't be as condensed. I will be doing them more spaced out. So it might be every week or every second week, I will continue that treatment. But in terms of supplements, just finding out what the clinic's got and then looking at what I need from back in New Zealand.
Hmm.
Yeah.
When you are back in New Zealand, will you keep in touch with the clinic, and kind of is there any sort of a follow-up sort of program where you're keeping them informed as to the status of your health or your condition?
Sure. So when I leave, I'll be taking some tests to do, test kits that I'll need to send away and get analysed. Every 4 to 6 months, they ask you to come back and do a challenge, which is to assess where your body's at, and especially in terms of the heavy metal detox. So I've got to figure out how that's going to look, because obviously I'm in a different country, so coming back here is a bit more of an ordeal. But I'm not the first person that's gone through this clinic from overseas, so
Sure.
they'll have strategies in place there. And there are some doctors in New Zealand that probably do similar tests, so I may be able to do something there. So yeah, the clinic has said already when I first signed up, the intention is that I'll keep in contact with them for probably the next 2 years,
Oh, great.
to do regular checkups to see that I'm on the right path and still doing the right thing. Ultimately, I guess I don't think this is the case for me, but I know there have been checkups with people and they've come back and done another round to get them back, or to keep encouraging them on that level of recovery. It really depends case by case, but yeah, I've got to keep in touch, and I want to keep in touch, to be honest, because the discussions I have with the doctor are all encompassing.
Yeah.
They're not going to profound to be experts in any one area apart from toxicology, because it's primarily what they are. But they have an awareness that your emotional state, your nutritional needs affect your health. And they have some ideas around that you can look at. But at all times, it's your own responsibility to figure out what that means for you. You can go and find where those courses are. That knowledge is where that knowledge is that you can bring into your own life. So, but the reason why I like that is that's not a conversation I've had with a doctor to date. I can go to a doctor and they'll say, well, what are you eating? And I'll say, I'm eating salads and cutting out the grains and the dairy and stuff. And they'll go, that's good, and we'll keep it up. It seems to be working. I need more than that from a doctor. I need a doctor that's going to be able to look at my emotional state, my nutritional state, and my physical state and go, you have to have a holistic perspective. But what I will say is that here in the States especially, that's a very limited avenue of knowledge that the doctors have because of the requirements of the medical association. This is my layman's interpretation. But even in New Zealand, I believe that there's a shortage of that breadth of understanding of what these things mean to the human body. An example, when I went and had my colonoscopies, and I appreciate this, you come out of the colonoscopy and the doctors want to give you something to eat, so they give you a white sandwich bread with ham inside of it. Now, from my research, I'm looking at that going, white bread that's probably had glyphosate sprayed on it with a processed meat, which has possibly got nitrates and all sorts of other additives in it to make it work so it can stay on the shelf in a supermarket. Well, I'm not eating that at home. Why am I eating that in a hospital? So I'm not saying they're wrong. And I do believe your emotional state when you eat food has a huge impact on what that does to your body. But why would I want to be putting that into my body when I know there's better food out there? And that's what I've missed from talking to doctors that I've encompassed in a number of areas, that breadth of knowledge to say, look, if you really want to turn your life around, go and eat better food, look after your emotions, and we can help you with the physiological aspect of your body.
Hmm. Logistically speaking, when you return to New Zealand, do you at this point, do you know like where you're going to be living, and you know if you'll have any source of income or anything like that?
No, all I know for certain, well, I don't even know this for certain because the things can change in this world, is that when I arrive home, I've got 2 weeks in quarantine. I'll probably be put up in a hotel where I have to stay indoors for 23 hours a day and may get an hour each day outside. That will has its own set of challenges, but you know I can make the most of that situation. After that, my living residence is with my brother-in-law and sister, and so I'll probably return there. But intuitively, my guidance or my intuition is saying, don't close your options off. There may be other options. And to be honest, it feels exciting when I don't try and have to have it all figured out before I get there. In terms of work, I will need to do something, I guess, because the financial situation requires me to. And plus, I feel like I want to get out and start doing things again. So why not? I guess, so I don't have any firm expectations around a job other than it's got to be a healthy environment, work environment for me. So something that keeps me active all day, something that I enjoy, and something that helps me to put money on the table, helps me pay my way. So no real strict criteria what it must look like, but those are the outcomes I must get from it. And don't be scared to investigate every option that comes up. It's way more exciting. And I've said this before in the past as well, but when I keep my options open and not try to define what my future must be, it's way easier to progress through life and move through it. But the possibilities that come around to me are far greater than I've ever planned.
Oh,
So,
for sure.
yeah.
Wow. Well, it has been a pleasure again chatting with you. So just want to give you the opportunity to sort of say any final words.
I might have run out, surprisingly. No, when times are tough, look for the positive. And don't, it doesn't have to be doom and gloom. When times are tough, believe in who you are. There's a bigger purpose to all this stuff. And maybe just look inside at what's going on inside of you. And just start exploring. Just let go of what things mean to you and your information sources, and maybe go and read something different that you'd never expect to read or watch or whatever. Because as soon as we get fixed that this is the only answer, it creates problems because everybody's got the answer and my answer is not going to suit you. So, so how do we progress as a species?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Durrick. I appreciate it, and have yourself a great week 2 of round 2. And we'll talk to you again in a week.
Thank you, Mark. Yep, we'll see you in a week.
Cheers. Take care, Durrick.
Thanks. Bye, Mark.